Raz, we're back.
Hey.
Another episode of the Generalists.
I'm happy.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Arun, thank you for coming. So we'll call you Dr. Arun for short. Is that okay?
Yeah, that
All
works.
right. So
Doctor works fine as well.
Yeah, doctor works fine as well.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're joined by Dr. Arun Jayaraj. You are a medically trained doctor, health coach, personal trainer, kind of focused on changing the landscape of the Singapore health and fitness scene is the way I think about it. People can find your company at getfit.sg to learn more about you and even how to engage you in some of your programs. You're really focused on kind of longevity, wellness, and I know you're kind of working with corporates around this and you're kind of actively involved in the government as well. So welcome to the Generalist.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Russ. We're really happy to be here.
Yeah.
And looking forward to this.
It's going to be fun. You want to take the
Yeah.
complicated question of Singapore, but this one will be a little bit more.
I like the complicated one.
Yeah, let's start.
So we have our routine when we ask how you get to Singapore, but for you, you're born in Singapore, so you're from Singapore. However, you have a different story. You decided to leave Singapore and come back. And just take into consideration that let's say the most common culture in Singapore is like, maybe you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, something like a position in the bank, but you took quite a different direction. Can you share more?
Yeah, I did. It's actually, where do I start? Actually, so the very beginning. So I've actually spent half my life away from Singapore. So I was born here until I was 3 years old, and then due to my dad's work, we moved around quite a bit as a kid. So I went to San Francisco, New Zealand, Switzerland, and Russia, and then came back, and then went away again, and I did the army here, and then I went away. So I've been back and forth out of Singapore for maybe 15 out of 31 years, and then I finally decided to move back home after 9 years in London about 2 years ago. But that was a very intentional choice, and it's been a great time being back.
Why did you come back?
Well, I think after 9 years in London, I realized that I wanted something new, and I felt like the opportunities were here in Singapore, at least within healthcare and transformation.
Okay.
And as much as the healthcare system in the UK does have its needs for transformation, I wanted to come home and tackle some of the issues that we had here in Singapore and around Southeast Asia as well.
Because of the innovation or because it's more regulated?
You know what? To me, I wasn't even thinking about that. I graduated from medical school and I wanted something exciting and new. So only when I came back did I start learning more about the system and the issues that we have here. But it's more about, let's go back home, see what's going on, and try to change what we can.
Did you start to work in London or was like into school, boom, come back? Like
exactly that.
Yeah.
So I graduated and I left like 5 days later.
Got it.
And I made that decision about 6 months from graduating because I was going to apply for a job, take it up outside of London so it would have been around Leicester. And I decided, no, you know what? I'm going to go back home. And then those 6 months it was tough to really accept that decision because, you wanted to become a doctor. You tell people you're going to become a doctor. Well, I did. But then working as a doctor was just not on my cards
What was the
anymore.
next step? The residency program and things like that? Like what would you have had to keep doing that you said, I'm out?
It would be about 2 years of basic foundation training and then another few years of specialization. So I wanted to become a GP. So that would have taken at least 5 years in the UK. Here it would have taken maybe a little bit shorter, but yeah, do that first and then decide what to do.
For people that are looking at us, some of them will say, we hear GP, explain your GP. What is a GP for you? Because, for some investor, a GP is something else.
A general practitioner,
Yeah.
very general, a doctor that you see when you need very basic things.
So when I go to the clinic,
Yeah.
is it see your GP? Right?
Yeah, or family medicine here in Singapore.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So you bailed on that and with this very I'm going to come back to Singapore and get moving on this thing. Let's talk about how I met you because that kind of sets the stage for kind of some of the stuff you're working on.
Yep.
So back to LinkedIn again. So saw you on LinkedIn. You're probably, there's lots of fitness people posting on LinkedIn, but what caught my attention was you were a doctor posting stuff about fitness that in my mind was practical. which I don't think there's enough of that. And I think I pinged you because as you work in like any of the corporates here, so when I've worked at Amazon, I work at Microsoft, you get that yearly physical paid for.
We had it in paper as well. But
okay, everybody's got it. And you go to Healthway Medical and you spend about 3 hours, you run around their different rooms and poke and prod and blood tests, and you can pick different things, whether you're male or female. And you go back to the waiting room for 45 minutes while they digest all this stuff. And then you go, no offense to anybody working in this thing, but you know what I'm talking about. You go back into another room and it's the GP or the doctor, stacks and stacks of the things coming in like a conveyor belt from all the people that went through the testing that day. And hey, nothing's obviously wrong with you. Your blood cholesterol's this, your blood pressure's pretty good. Keep doing it. See you next year.
Yep.
I learned absolutely nothing. Right. And what I was trying to figure out is like, isn't there something more I should know? Is like at the time I'm 50 and isn't some of my stuff changing as I age? Like I just no education. Right. And then that's when I said, well, it'd be nice to talk to somebody who, as you put in your thing, medically trained, but also cares about fitness and wellness longevity, who might be able to like tell me a little bit more. I wouldn't say this system is necessarily broken, but it leaves a lot of open space that could be worked on. Like what is that system kind of, how do you correlate to that system, and what do you think about it, and what are you trying to do to like make a difference?
Yeah, so I've thought about this for quite a few years, and I initially studied biomedical science and I want to go into pharma. And then around that time, I also got my fitness training qualification as well. And so I applied to medical school because I had this thought of, what if we focus a little more on prevention than cure? What would that look like? But throughout, I also realized that the incentives around cure were a lot different than prevention. And so we had to change how we think about
monetary incentives.
Yes.
We're blunt here. Sorry.
Yeah. So the way we think about prevention and cure, and so I've thought about that for years. And then I wanted to write about prevention in a way that blended both fitness, health, evidence, and medicine together. And so what you're talking about with health screenings, especially when it comes to corporate screenings, I'm happy that these companies are actually providing it in the first place. I do think that more Singaporeans and people in Singapore should be screening themselves at least once a year. But just like you said, what do you do with those results? And what is the difference between bad and good? Is it just 1 point? And what does that look like? So what are you supposed to do if you're just 1% point below what's bad? Are you just supposed to, it's fine, just go back home, continue doing what you're doing? You need more doctors that actually push you and say, look, it's been getting worse for the last few years. You need to start doing something. And there are a lot of doctors that do it, but when it comes to, if it's a conveyor belt of health screenings, it is tough in those few minutes. Hey, look, all right, maybe you should do something better, but I don't really have the time to produce a plan. And that's not the fault of a broken system. That's just maybe not their focus on that day.
Yeah.
So, and I started to think about how can I produce some form of coaching that takes on that element of medical care and take on a patient or a client and to optimize the health screening results, which a lot of coaches may not fully be comfortable doing. But for me, I'm very comfortable looking at a bunch of results, looking at the context, taking the doctor's recommendation, and then provide a coaching plan.
Because of your background.
Because of my background, yeah. So I'm just comfortable doing that. I knew that that's where my unfair advantage was. And I decided, all right, this is what I want to do initially. And that's how I was writing about, that's what I was writing about on LinkedIn. How to optimize.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go few steps back in time. Okay? Because you already brought us to the tipping point of your decision. Yeah? Because you look about something, you saw an issue, and you almost, took an action. We're going to get to that in a second. But take us to the journey, how are you deciding for having your, fitness coaching and becoming an entrepreneur, which is, take us to the journey. How did it happen?
I think throughout medical school, I just spent a lot of time that maybe I should have maybe spent a lot more time studying. Okay, but I did what I needed to. But I spent a lot of time on Twitter. Okay. And so, and that's where I learned a lot more about being a solopreneur. And I was also working as a photographer, fitness photographer on the side. And so how do I build my own brand, both on social media, my website, the whole sales funnel? I wasn't great at it, but it was fun. And I think that's where it really started, just learning about selling something that you care about and providing value to someone else in exchange for money. And as that it was just exciting to me. And sometimes there were times I'd come home after a day at the hospital and I'd be really excited to start working on this. And that's the reality. And then over time, I thought, why not blend these two things together? I really love the idea of building something and helping others out within healthcare as well. So how do I blend this into a service or a coaching program? But I wasn't actually sure, should I specialize in something or use my skills to put it in different areas? And that's when I started, when I moved back home, I was like, what kind of businesses am I going to build? And so for the last 2 years, I've been working on these different things.
Yeah. And you're taking kind of like, because full disclosure, Arun's my once a week trainer. We used to do a couple times a week, then we've settled into a once a week routine to kind of keep me on track.
So Saturday.
That's my Saturday morning,
okay.
8 o'clock, Core Collective. And it's been great. And I'll admit this, and I think you kind of know this, correct me if I'm wrong. There's as much conversational therapy going on as well as the training, because I have someone I can talk to. But I think it's reciprocated a little bit because you'll pick my brain on startups and funding, and it's fun, right? And I started to realize that you kind of have this portfolio approach to what you're doing, right? Because it's not just Get Fit. There's some other things you're doing. And him and I have talked about this where there's traditional ways of doing startups. Let's go raise money. Let's build a startup. One thing, grind many years. It's okay. People will do that. Some people are very successful to get exits. I have a friend from my previous history, and if he ever comes to Singapore, we'll definitely have him on, Michael Girdley, that's famous in America for portfolio approach. I think he's on like his 10th business, but he owns them all and finds people to operate them. You're kind of on that path, I think, a little bit in how you're thinking about this whole wellness spectrum. So one of the other areas you're working on is called remission. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that's very, very focused, but fits into your umbrella of kind of your overall strategy.
Yeah. So I think, as you mentioned, at some point I realized, okay, what if you had a holding company and then you try out different things? So you have I have a set of skills and passions, and I could put it in many different places. I could go 100% in one. And when you read a lot of these business books, and even on YouTube as well, it's like maybe just focus on one and go for it. But I just who I am personality-wise also, I wanted to come back and try to figure out the market, especially in Singapore, and what I could build. So then I had this holding company. Then I decided, okay, have a personal coaching service, explore other areas of coaching and wellness that we could produce, either a service-based business or a product itself. Then I started to think about this idea that I've had for years, this idea of diabetes remission. Reversal that doesn't really come from medication. Because what we know from diabetes itself, especially type 2 diabetes, medication doesn't really reverse it. It manages it, and if a person takes the medication and changes their lifestyle, it is possible that they can actually be sort of cured from it. Although not lifelong, but it's called remission because you are in a relatively lower risk of diabetes through weight loss, eating better, fitness. But I find that a lot of doctors and patients are not aware that going into remission from diabetes is actually possible, even though we've had studies over the last few years to show that you can. And so I started to think, how would I build a business around remission? But then it goes back to the issue of incentives and payers. Who wants to pay for this? If people would rather pay for a drug, they may not want to pay for coaching over the year. And if I want to try to get insurance payers to pay for this, in Singapore, that's not often the case. In the US, it does happen, but here it seems to be an issue. So what I've been trying to explore is how do you actually help patients reverse their diabetes through a membership type program. So you have medication, you have appointments with doctors, you have coaches. How do you put it all together? Because the risk of diabetes in the region Singapore and around Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, it's getting a lot worse. And it's going to have a lot of other effects on cardiovascular health and other strain and a larger strain on the healthcare system as well. So we need to start earlier.
And I guess there's always a proclivity, whether intentioned or not, that like take something to solve something, where mostly it's physical that's gotten people into that situation, right? Not working out, gaining weight. I think a lot of this theory could be applied of like, if you got fit, it might actually solve for X or Y, but that's harder to do, right? But I think like your kind of mantra here is, can we think about that as a first principle? Like still, you might need some drug to alleviate in the meantime, but what you're saying is, in theory, somebody could come and get fit, use the medicine to management, and then maybe hit a point that they don't need the medicine anymore. But of course, they would need to continue to stay fit, right?
Yeah.
That's a hard thing for people to do, right?
And it's also hard for a doctor to watch over a patient throughout the year. Reversing a medical condition takes years.
Yeah.
It may take at least 12 months.
Yeah.
It might take longer than that. Your GP has many other things to do. And sometimes they're not really incentivized. They're not charging anything to be able to produce that service.
Yeah.
So it's really about going in and trying to switch how we look at medical care and to really guide someone along. But the good thing with tech is that at least self-management is a lot easier with continuous glucose monitors and apps to have patients be a little more motivated to manage themselves.
Yeah.
But there's still another layer because, like you said, you can't just tell people you eat a little better, move a little more. I mean, a lot of people know that.
And it doesn't mean anything, by the way, to them. What does it mean?
Exactly.
More or less or
Yes.
better? It's too ambiguous.
It is.
In a sense.
And unfortunately, we need to, the idea of personalized diabetic care and personalized many other chronic disease care is, I believe that is the future of chronic disease management, a personalization with some form of membership throughout the year. But that's what I'm exploring.
Yeah. It's actually remind me, I'm a cyber guy. Yeah. So we have a term in cyber, we call it cyber hygiene.
Right.
Okay. There's ongoing diseases in the IT. And you tell them, fix it, act differently, but they don't understand, what does it mean? It's like eat more or be better. But when you have a managed service that assisting you with continuous cyber hygiene, it's something that for me it resonates, in your case. If I'm taking into your, domain, we need to make sure we have kind of a managed services. I'm just echoing,
Yeah.
kind of managed services, but they have to be personalized.
Yes.
I'm taking a sidetrack for a second. Yeah. Do you think leveraging AI will assist you with that one? AI.
You asked me.
It took me like 20 minutes.
How far did we go in without saying AI?
About half, yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty
good. So no, I was gonna say, look, I think that having some form of help is important. Okay, now having a human helping everyone is expensive, but now thinking about how can AI provide a data collection from everything that you're doing, and then understand how to nudge you towards the right, nudge you to stay on the right path. Because it's not about getting it right every single day, every single meal, every single night with your sleep and your stress management, but it's about getting it at least 30-40% right and slowly nudging you throughout the day. Most people cannot. I do not have access to my clients when they are sleeping right before they go to bed. I mean, I wish I could be right there in their home telling them, "Hey, you need to go to sleep.
Put the donut down.
Slap food out of their hands." But I can't do all those things. But I think having some form of AI-assisted coaching, where all the data is collected and managed with AI, with a coach that then checks over them maybe every 2 weeks to see how they're doing. This may not work for everyone, but I do think that at least we already have a lot of data that we're collecting from our smartwatches and our phones. I think this is only going to increase, but it's about how to consolidate all the data from these pieces of tech and also health screening data and other forms of medical data, which of course then we have to go into other data laws. But let's say if it's just wellness data, how do we put it all together to nudge people in the right direction?
If I'm taking your background, what you're specialist in is you're a doctor. You have other skills you just share with us. So do you see yourself as a generalist or a specialist?
I see myself as a generalist because I think about myself. There are skills and passions that I feel the passions are important to me, and skills that put me at an unfair advantage over other people. So how do you put them all together to then create several different products, services, and things that I care about? So I think I'm a specialist in who I am, maybe, but what I do is the work of a generalist, where I'm trying to put it in different things. So I don't think of it as I only do this one thing. I do all these things that still come back to the things I care about and my skills. You know what? I'm going to lean on generalist. And that's the way that I would like to go for now, even though I've thought about it, should I be specializing in something? But based on my own personality, like I said, I like the idea of exploring new things. And yeah.
Do you think anything in your education helped to do that, or just that, or the education was so specialist and the generalism came from realizing there's all these things you want to do? Like, where did that switch get flicked?
I think in general, medical school, people think that after the 5 years, you then specialize in something, but you don't. You still have to do another 2 years of general work, and then maybe you specialize after that. So it's nice because through medical school, you get to learn about a wide variety of things, and then later you get to choose. And I think that's just how I spent most of my 20s, really, just learning a wide variety of things. And now in my 30s, I'm thinking, where do I really want to put them? What do I care about? And what do I want to do for the next 10 years? So I think it's more like, I think my education allowed me to be more generalist.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Which is probably like contrarian, right? What some people may not think that, because like you said, they probably think it's specialist, but you're saying it's a lot of years of generalist doctor leading up to what you're going to specialize in, right?
I think for what I do, yeah. But yeah.
So I think like we're in interesting times right now, because as much as there's the problems that we can talk about, the diabetes, the what's happening in health, there's also an interesting like wave underfoot, even within Singapore, of wellness, technology. Like we can mention Mito Health, which I think is interesting. They recently just got into Y Combinator, which is probably one of the more interesting ones. It's doing testing. Like, what do you think for yourself in Singapore the future kind of looks like with wellness, and what are you kind of agitating on? You just mentioned your 10-year thing. What is your 10-year thing when it comes to wellness in Singapore, and what do you think about what's happening in the current environment right now?
I think in Singapore specifically, it's important to understand what the government wants to achieve. And so understanding where the government is leading the way, or where they want to lead the way, is that where you actually understand where you want to build as well. So I think with Health ESG, when we think about longitudinal care with your GP over years, which is something other countries have been doing, the UK have been doing it for many years, that means that prevention is starting to become a lot more incentivized and not needing the cure. So things like these health screening services, health screening startups, it is aligned to Health ESG in a way. Health ESG is for the public, and if we create more expensive, maybe more luxury services on top of that, then it makes sense. So I think just looking at the messaging that's coming out from the Ministry of Health, focusing on prevention and aligning it to the government is the way to go. And that's where you can get a lot. So you don't have to fight. I mean, you're going along with the wave. Yeah. And I think with wellness now, there needs to be a little more integration between the wellness industry, so gyms, personal trainers, yoga studios, and medicine. Because if we can work together, we can help patient care a lot better than just the medical industry alone and the wellness industry on its own. We cannot work in silos to improve public health. And in a way, every yoga coach, breathwork coach, or fitness coach or doctor, they're all longevity coaches in a way. I mean, everyone's trying to help people
like live the North Star is kind of the same.
It is kind of,
but it's not all being connected, right?
And we cannot say that, my way is the best, you know, and start to compare. it's just generally, if we're trying to help people go from A to B, feeling a little bit better every single day, we need to work together, all these industries in wellness and healthcare, to provide a better service. And for me, I feel like I'm between both worlds, and I want to find ways to build something in between them so that it works together.
Take us to a use case, how we can connect, these two words. How do you see that?
That's why when I'm thinking of building remission for diabetes, we have medical care, which is important. So anti-diabetic medication, health screenings, and doctors to guide you along the way. We also have gyms, fitness coaches, nutrition, meal planning, and many other coaches to help you be more active, sleep better, eat better, lose weight. But it can't be that I go to my doctor and then I'm completely disconnected and I start talking to all these other wellness professionals who do not understand what my doctor needs me to do, and I'm just going back and forth. So as we move forward, I think we need more services that builds together a medical clinic, their services, care for the patient, and other wellness services together, all in one go.
Yeah, for me it sounds like each individual need to have his dashboard. Yeah, dashboard when he can see, his medical side, his wellness side, and he have how he can move the needle. Yeah, so you can look at that every day. I already imagine it in my head. Yeah, it's like a screen. When you have these two words are in the same, location, and then is it something that you imagine as well, or I'm just,
No, exactly that. And I have my own wellness dashboard. So I built it in Notion. And so I have all my results from smartwatch data, how I feel, health screening, all put together to show how I'm improving month by month, year by year. And so that's me motivated creating that for myself. But I think if all of us could just start to put these things together, we can integrate our healthcare engagement and our wellness engagement without having to join such a program. But it's really putting it together and having these conversations with different types of professionals to see, hey, I have this medical problem. Do you think you can help me with this? How much do you understand? And even your doctor, sometimes, they may not have the time, but there are many doctors that really do have great recommendations for who to go to when you have these problems. So ask your doctor and say, do you have this recommendation for my knee? Do you have this recommendation for my reversing my risk of heart disease? And yeah, I think that's the future. We need to have more doctors that think about lifestyle as well.
Yeah. Good. I'm going to shift a bit to your life. Yeah. Because you are born as a Singaporean and there was expectations, for your Singapore family, how things supposed to look like. What's your parents' role with your innovation, with your entrepreneurship? How they see that? Can you share more?
I'm an only child. And so in a way, my parents have been my best friends forever because we moved around quite a bit. Everywhere we went, it was new to all three of us. And so we kept together and we made it through all these years. And so throughout my 20s, when I was trying to figure out what to do, they wanted me to be comfortable and to be able to live a life without them. I think that's the main thing. They were not very specific about what I needed to do. So when people ask me, do you apply to medical school because of my parents had no say in applying to medical school because they didn't ask me to do that. I did it on my own. They even asked me, are you sure? And so in a way, they were just providing this guidance throughout without actually telling me where to go, which is what I really appreciated all the way through, which is something maybe a lot of my peers did not feel, but I'm very grateful for that.
I kind of relate this to my whole coaching versus advising conundrum, where it's kind of like question and listen and leave it to you to decide versus, oh no, I think you should do A or B, which is not what they did, right? I'm passionate about this because I've had coffee with him and his dad and hanging out a little bit. And as a parent, there's so much to figure out, right? Like, and you realize that like you don't have all the answers. And you're right. What you really want them to be able to do is be okay on their own, right? And that's both from like confidence, being able to make money and survive, because that's eventually what will have to happen. So it's very interesting to kind of hear that they didn't really follow the normal pattern that I think a lot of us see and get exposed to in the regional kind of ecosystem of education and parenting, because they kind of like let you decide, but have been very supportive of where you become. Because yes, you did train to be a doctor. I'm sure there was a big decision point in saying, but I'm not going to be one, or I'm not going to practice as one. Was that a shock to them? Was that a big barrier to cross, or was it just like, oh, that's your decision? Because I'm sure that was a big branch in the system, right?
Funnily, it was, so I said I was about 6 months out from graduating, and I was having a conversation with my parents, and I think I was unhappy about just what was going on at the time. And my mom actually asked me, do you really want to do this? And that's really the one that...
And it's a question, right? She didn't, you know what I'm saying? That's that part I find amazing. She asked you to like, that probing kind of, no answer. She
didn't say, it's not the wrong way, son. No, you should do like that. She asked you, are you sure?
Yeah. And are you sure as in, do you want to work as a doctor? So, I mean, who would ask that? And I said, I don't know. And that point, at least feeling that my parents were supportive was what I needed. Yeah. And I think I understand why parents are afraid. And generally, when we think about medicine, finance, being a lawyer, engineering, you're thinking of high status, high salary, high security. Your parents want you to have these things, or either
that all aligns, right?
That all aligns.
Their goals and desires.
Yeah, but I think also I had to also tell my parents after a while that high status, high salary, and high security can come in many different forms. It may not all come in, all three may come in the same way, but you can find a lot of other things that they did not have access to when they were younger. And the good thing is that they understood that, yeah, actually that's true. There are many more ways to live a life that's comfortable, that's not from the jobs that we once knew were the way to go.
I think we've done this in a few episodes. Obviously, you haven't seen them yet, where we've kind of decided that there's somebody connected to you that we would also like to talk to. And I proffer that it's going to be his dad on one of his return trips from India. The quick segue there is your dad retired, came out of retirement to take probably one of the largest roles in his life at a age that most people would be hanging up their spurs. I think that's going to be an interesting conversation, because for me, it's like, I'm very much like intrigued by it, and kind of, it's given me kind of a renewed energy of thinking that age is just a number, right? It has nothing to do with your desire to keep performing, whether it's physical or mental or at the job, right? So I think your dad is like a very interesting example of that. My takeaway from this, and it's been, whether you know or not, it's influenced me a lot in how I'm thinking about my children and what to do, and realizing that although it sounds kind of simple, it's simply helping them, enabling them to be their best and to have a life without you, which I think is what your parents have done for you.
Yes.
Because you don't have any guilt about not becoming a doctor that I can tell, or anything like I missed out on something, or a mom reminding you of, no, you didn't become it. That's never entered your vernacular, right?
No, and I'm grateful that they've never made me feel guilty. But I would add that I went in with a plan, so it did help. It's not like I said, I don't want to be a doctor and I don't know what to do. So I think that really helps. So I would say that anyone that's afraid of your parents and how they feel, please create a plan, even something small, before you make certain decisions.
And that's a fantastic point, because it's a huge difference in saying, hey, I don't want or agree with that, but I'm going to do it and I'm convicted, is a huge thing, both for the parent and the child. So I think that's super good advice.
I would say personally, I did the same. Yeah, so come with the plan, works. Yeah, and I had like plan A, B, and C. So my parents like, okay, it's like too much for now, but still it works. It works.
You had me at A. You had me at
A. Yeah.
So fantastic stuff. I think people can find you at getfit.sg, find you on LinkedIn. Just people search for Dr. Arun. Everybody's super supportive of what you're trying to do and the difference you're making in Singapore. And hopefully just being here will help get the word out on that a little bit more. I think there's lots we could talk about, but keeping with our format, keeping this kind of tight, let's go to our closers that we always have. What would you tell your 20-year-old self today that might have helped?
Learn how to sell yourself. I think when you're 20s, you think that you need to be better in different areas of your life, and you keep thinking, what do I do? What do I do? But sometimes you have to sell yourself to maybe a different group of people, and you need to understand where your strengths are and really try to just focus on that. And then over time, build the life that you want. And I say in my 20s, I knew, when I look back, there were certain things that I knew I was great at for a certain group of people. But I was in the wrong groups. I was trying to impress people that were not going to engage with what I had. So if I could go back, I would learn a little more about sales in general, and then the idea of selling yourself.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's one of my mantras in the startup tech industry that I tell founders, like, learn how to sell. Because if you haven't carried the bag, as we all call it in sales, and you're going to try to go start a company, you're missing a core principle of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. You need to have your story. Your story will sell itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't always have to do more. It's just writing the narrative and then selling an idea. It's not just about money. I mean, can you sell an idea and convince people to do something that improves their lives? And if you can do that, it's both purposeful for yourself and maybe even great for whatever you're trying to build.
We like to ask, what do you do for your wellness? But I think it's your entire life is wellness. So let's find something, surprise us.
One of my biggest problems is sleep. I think that I don't need a lot of sleep to perform well. But because I get so excited about building what I build.
What are those hours?
I could get away with 5-6 hours. Now, I'm not saying that that's good for me. All I'm saying is I can still perform.
Yeah.
How that's affecting my physical well-being, I'm not too sure in the long run. So I wouldn't recommend it. But I am working on having some discipline in shutting off and stop reading and working and watching YouTube videos, learning more after a certain time to get to bed. And I tell this to as many people I worked with or just anyone in general. You don't have to get it right all the time, but you need to be really mindful of why you're not achieving what you're achieving with your health. So I know my sleep should be better. I know exactly why it's not better. And so then I try to get it back when I think it's not going away. So sleep. And I think for most people right now, if you can fix one thing, sleep first, and then start to think about activity.
So what you're saying, also in your small time that you can have your physical, mental, you dictate yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And this is pure wellness for you.
For me, it's just, no, really, it's just this whole idea of just being mindful of where I should be improving.
It's worked for you,
Yeah, I was going to say the sad thing about getting older is I feel like I sleep less. Something I wake up early. But yeah, so what's ideal? 7-8 hours? Is that, do you think is...
I think you start with 7 and then you start playing around, because it depends on, like you said, firstly, if you have kids waking you up or any other reason you're waking up throughout the night, going to the toilet, you may not get the quality sleep that you want. So 7 hours to you may not be 7 hours to me.
Somebody else. Yeah.
And so you have to find your own, and you need to, people are getting on the Oura rings or Apple Watches to understand your sleep. But sometimes you have to wake up and just tell yourself, do I feel rested? You should know. And I have had people where feel rested, look at a watch, and then it's like, oh, you're not rested. And like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not rested.
Yeah,
and then it changes the way you...
I'm smiling because it's...
Is that what you do? I quit wearing this stuff because I realized I just know. Like, I know eating this or drinking that or watching an hour later, like, it's going to wreck it. Like,
I can say that I'm wearing my Garmin watch. It's like a new edition, but I have the same style for 4 years. And it changed, for sure, my awareness, because I need sleep. I need between 7 or 8. If not, I feel it on my body. I feel it right away. I don't know, because I'm 42, but I feel it. Yep. And the watch give me kind of, it's like you want to scale yourself. Yeah, so you see the numbers, awareness. So yeah, sometimes I have the feeling, no, I felt like I had a good sleep. Why are you saying not?
You're lying to me.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us something you watch, listen to, read that's useful for you.
So one thing I'm really into right now is the idea of building in-person communities and events, something that I never really thought about because I wanted to build everything online. I was very happy sitting at home on my laptop, on my phone, creating content and building things. I'm reading this book called 2 Hour Cocktail Party by Nick Gray on how to create a cocktail party to build networking events. But I'm also learning on, I want to start a running club in my area because I think I'm also starting to crave more social interactions around fitness. And I think running is a great way to just easily get people going, even if it's a fast walk. And so I'm learning a lot about building in-person communities.
So try to take the normally insular, let me just create, to face-to-face, let me co-create type of thing.
Yes, and the fun of building it and having its own incentives and bringing other partners in. So it's not.
Is it uncomfortable for you, and that's why you didn't do it, or you just never thought that it was something to focus on?
Yeah, I think I just never really thought. I was very comfortable, kind of just doing things on my own for quite a long time. But I realized that it's in Singapore. I don't know about building the social circle for me just gets smaller and smaller. And if you don't really put in the work, especially I work on my own, I don't have colleagues, and I can also not really see anyone for a while other than my own clients. I won't, it's so easy not to get it done. And I feel that one of the important things about longevity is social connections with your family, your friends, and maybe even meeting more people that care about what you're caring about. So if I care about longevity myself and promote it, I should also be doing the part about social connections. So I'd like to build more of that.
Nice.
So we're going to end, but we're going to ask one more thing. If somebody were to go to a gym and try to just start doing something, what's the 2 or 3 exercises you would say? Just do these 2 or 3 things. If you're coming from nothing, and you'll be better than doing nothing. What would those be?
I think if you've already made it to the gym, you've done 80-90% of the job. The hard part is getting there. So once you just show up, that's it. And it might feel intimidating, all the machines and dumbbells. You see people doing all kinds of things that you may not be too sure of how to do. First thing, just go to a treadmill, put it on a very slight incline, go to about 3 or 4 kilometers per hour, put your phone down, maybe watch a YouTube video, and that's it. That's all you need to do for now, because you need to start becoming comfortable of getting to the gym and being part of it. And then after that, do a few body weight squats, maybe some core exercises such as sit-ups, a plank in a corner that you're comfortable with, and start there. That's it. Body weight and incline treadmill.
So the habit of getting in, the habit of moving, and then start doing some things. And by then, the repetition's probably going to force you to keep going. Right?
And then you're going to learn about how to do the other things, and you're going to feel comfortable because you belong. And the thing about it in the gym is that you need to feel like you belong in that space with the people around you, that you are no different from anyone else that has been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
So just get there, do something simple.
I love it. Build the routine.
Yeah.
Build the routine.
It's a common refrain. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's awesome to get this insight from you and to have you on the show.
I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Awesome.